Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was quite a remarkable woman. She worked with people who were at different stages of dying. An amazing heart, very sensitive. And she came up with a model to describe what people go through who are facing death. And it had 5 stages. She called them the 5 stages of grief. And the first stage, and they could actually come in any order pretty much, but the first stage is denial. What? Who, me? No, that can't be. That's not possible. It's just a denial. Someone tells you that you've got some kind of a disease, it's terminal. What? No, not me. So that's the first stage. The second stage can be anger. It's like, you can imagine, like, this really pisses me off. I've got this I want to do, and that I've got to do. I can't leave my family. There's all kinds of things, and you can railing at God. Anger is there. And then bargaining was the next stage that she came up with, which is like, if I dedicate my life to something or promise to serve in some way, then maybe the powers that be, God, will grant me some extra time. And then when all of that fails, you go into a stage which she called depression, which kind of speaks for itself. Like, that's it then, I guess. Which leads into the final stage, which is acceptance. Okay, now I guess I better pack my bags, get things in order, and get ready to leave. And when I first read that, I thought it was pretty good. Most people have found that to be really valuable. And there have been whole systems of support for people who are nearing death. That is the result of the work that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has done. But I'm of a different mind now. I believe that we don't have to go there. And if we didn't wait until death to consider death, if we worked proactively long before death was even in the picture, then we wouldn't go through those stages. Those stages are a very low vibrational energy. When you think about it, where someone is leaving their body and they're passing on to some other realm, heaven, a higher vibration. Sometimes around death, there's a lot of love, which is very high vibrational. But anger, denial, depression, those things are very low vibrational. And I got to thinking about how acceptance, when you get to the final stage of acceptance, the word that kept coming to my mind is submission. There's no choice, really. Okay. That's not really acceptance. That's just, well, there's no alternative. That's what my mind did with it in any case. So I've come up with actually 5 different ways of moving through the process of death and transforming grief so that death becomes more of an alchemist than the grim reaper. And my first stage is acceptance. That was the last stage in Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's model. If at the beginning, long before death is even in the picture, if we can accept death, then there's not going to be a struggle later on. And of course, death is absolute. It's not something we can bargain with in the end. It's not something that's maybe going to come. It's absolutely going to come. We live our lives in denial of it, active denial of it. That's what's got to shift. So at the very beginning, we're talking about the inevitability of death. Death is coming. Okay, so we should learn more about it. So the acceptance of that leads into my second stage, which is a proactive stage, where, okay, I know it's coming. Now I'm going to find out more about it. And that's given as nothing's immediate. Nobody's actually dying right now. You've got some time to explore. And it's like, let's explore life before death, life between deaths, life after death, near-death experiences. There are books out, dozens, hundreds of books that have been written by people who have had these experiences. They're very entertaining. They're engrossing, many of them. There's a book called Memories from Heaven, and it's a compilation of stories of parents whose children remember being in heaven before they came to earth. It's fascinating. I mean, whatever you may believe, you must also then question how it can be so many parents could have these stories to share. Where a child who didn't know that there had been a sister, well, let's tell the story differently. There's a child, a mother reports, who's playing with an invisible friend. And she's talking and serving this tea from a pretend little tea set. And it's looking wonderful. And the mother says, "So who are you talking to, dear?" And the little girl says, "It's a friend." And Mom says, "Well, where do you know her from?" "Well, I know her from before I came here," says this little girl who's 3 or 4 years old. "And does she have a name?" the mother asks. And the little girl says, "Yes, her name is Natalie." At which point the mother realizes something has happened, because this little daughter didn't know she had an older sister who had died before she was born. And that sister's name was Natalie. So that's what I mean about the magic of these stories. So with proactivity, you start to understand that death is not necessarily an end. That death is not an end. There's a going on and a coming from. It's just part of a dynamic, cycles and cycles. So suddenly, the kind of a death that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is talking about, and so many of us have believed at that time and have believed largely since that view is shifting, was that death is like a wall. It's like finished, done, we're through. Well, in this proactive stage, you're discovering that's not true. The next stage is a stage I call release. And so we're not bargaining for anything, and we're not going into anger. Release is the stage where there is death. Someone is passing on. And basically in the release stage, as I put it forward, that sort of encompasses the whole process that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is speaking of. But having done the work that you've done and having accepted that death is coming, when you discover that death is here, well, there's not going to be the anger that was there before. And there's not going to be the denial, because you've accepted it. It becomes then basically a recognition that we've come to a place of transition. Someone has just come to the place where they're moving on. And so you find a way of saying goodbye, knowing that they haven't really left. They're just not going to be present in the way they've been present. The next stage, my fourth stage, is reflection. And this is a magical stage. This is a very powerful one. And this is what will take the pain and suffering in grief away. Because when you're in reflection, thinking about the things that you shared, reflecting on the gifts that have been there, on the person that you knew, you experience them on a completely new level. I found in my case that I developed a love for my partner that I could never have developed while she was alive, because in the memories and in this period of reflection, I was discovering aspects of her I couldn't see while she was alive and would never have known. So, as strange as it may sound, I've thanked God for the blessings that have come for me in the ability to see this aspect of Shara long after she left. So that leads us to our final stage. And the final stage is gratitude. Just a thank you to all that made the sharing possible, the love that was there, and the experiences that we had. There's such a profound place of thanksgiving when you consider that you've been two souls living on parallel journeys, sharing and supporting one another, knowing that at one point one of you is going to go ahead and wait until the other one followed. There's a lot to be grateful for. And when you consider those stages that I've just outlined, each one of them is a higher vibrational experience. It's expansive. You don't collapse. You don't give up, give away. No. You find yourself able to celebrate at a level that you couldn't before. And grief, yes, there will be sadness, of course, because we've created such a habit of loving physically. But once you've moved through that and reminded yourself about the permanence of love and that life goes on outside of the body, then there's a new there's actually a new gift waiting for you. And that's the relationship that will be there after death. There is a dance that can go on with love beyond death. The relationship doesn't have to end.